The Deadwood movie was probably about as good as you could reasonably hope, considering it had quite a bit to wrap up from the 3 seasons that I'm sure was intended for a season's worth of content at minimum, and that it wasn't even made until over a decade later. A lot of times with these shows that pick up way later or do a movie way later, it really feels off, even if they don't necessarily do anything terrible. But I think because they were able to get almost the entire cast back and they incorporated the 10-year jump into the story anyway, it works pretty well. Some people still feel off, but even that component to some degree they managed to make work. Al Swearingen, for example, is in ill health the whole movie, and they gave them all some makeup, made it very clear they aged. I wouldn't say that it recaptures exactly the energy and chemistry that it had in the original series. It still works pretty well for what it is.
Those that doubt me, suck cock by choice.
At the end of the day, a movie length is only about 2 episodes for a show like this. And this is partially just an acknowledgement of how good the character work was in the first 3 seasons. That's not too hard to imagine what fills the time gap because it doesn't do anything crazy. They kind of just carry on the trajectory that they were on. Cy Tolliver and Silas are probably the biggest losses, and unless I just missed it, it would have at least been nice to get even just a throwaway line of some kind acknowledging their fate would have been nice. And it's funny that I'm actually praising the way the time skip is used here because I'm about to criticize it for Andor Season 2 after the best 3 episodes of the season just came out. I think the time skip works really well on just the most fundamental level because unlike so many things, all of the characters feel kind of like they did before, just a little bit older, maybe a little bit more subdued, but they didn't have some crazy ass personality flip like Luke Skywalker or 95% of other characters that get aged up and suddenly seem like different humans. And even decisions that you might not like Seth and Martha ending up together, or if you didn't like Saul and Trixie ending up together, it was pretty apparent the direction those things were going. Obviously, seeing Al in ill health is not fun. Seeing George Hurst come back as a senator with all this power is not fucking great or fun to watch happen. And it picks a relatively simple story to tell. Everyone's kind of moved on with their life after season 3. Deadwood has settled down. Hurst and Mrs. Ellsworth have moved on to their own things. Obviously, little Sophia's grown up. Saul's finally having a baby. Utter's got his land and he's just kind of relaxing. I mean, it is kind of how life goes. Where when you're younger, you want to do different things. You're trying to stay busy. And as you get older, you calm down more, have less energy. Adulthood hits you in the face. And I like that the town of Deadwood kind of parallels this journey as well. It goes from being the Wild West, every gunslinger and hooker roaming around doing whatever they want, murder, and people being fed to pigs, common occurrence. And slowly as it grew and got incorporated to society and became more stable, it became a more relaxed place. Obviously, there were some inklings of this in the second couple seasons. Kids were starting to be brought to town. There was a school put in place. A theater was on the way. Politicians were making their way there, along with the government. And then you kind of have Hearst come in, being how he is and getting everybody stirred up again. Obviously, the show is not super historically accurate, and it's a bummer that you see Charlie Utter die and a few other meaningless deaths. At least you get a duel. You get to bring the N-word general back as a witness. Of course, they tend to call him Samuel Fields now, which I'm not even sure if I knew his real name until this movie. You get to see Mr. Wu have a kid, and the kid is bilingual, also pretty reflective of real life, smart world building as far as it goes in that degree. And it either cheats or tries to appeal to people who've never seen the show. We get some flashbacks throughout. Obviously, if you were to watch this in real time, you'd have that effect of, damn, they used to look a lot younger. For me, I watched them a few days apart, so it didn't really hit me that way, but I can imagine that over a decade-long gap having that effect. So we get a good mixture of a relatively satisfying conclusion. Al's ending is a bit open to interpretation. To me, it seems like he's dead. I saw people debating online that you could take it either way. I guess in particular because the actual Al Swearingen lived quite a bit longer. We get to see them pull one over on George Hurst, preventing him from getting the land that he wants. He gets some beat up mob justice because the town is firmly united against him. Saul and Trixie finally get married and have a kid. Bullock already has his own family. All in all, it's a good enough mixture of concluded with what you would expect and nostalgia that it at least functions as an ending that people won't hate.
But
Well, there it is.
Acting wise, they've all still pretty much got it. And I think if you're a fan of the show, you can probably accept, like, okay, now it feels like it's over. Even if you didn't get to see maybe all the things that you would have wanted to play out, especially when the crew was younger and they still had the chemistry going and the show had really had its own rhythm. At this point, I'm sure you've all seen a show that tried to come back later and it just didn't work, whether it was Arrested Development or Dexter or fucking Sex and the City. I don't know. There's been enough things that have gotten way too late sequels and everything just feels strange. And I think this one does a pretty good job of at least minimizing that effect. Obviously, it would have been great if they had gotten a bit of a heads up and could have done a 4th season and really taken their time to flesh these arcs out and end things the way they wanted to on their own terms. But, you know, most shows, they get canceled the way that it did, certainly don't get a movie way later and manage to take advantage of that opportunity and get everyone back. So all in all, it's good enough, but I don't think it was ever going to be a masterpiece. I think it's just too difficult with a show like this that has so many characters and multiple things that are open. And the ending it had was abrupt. It wasn't even like it kind of had an ending and then just didn't add on story. It was trying to wrap up a bunch of things that had been building for 3 seasons. So all in all, I'm more glad that it exists than if it didn't. But there's always going to be a little bit there of just wondering what could have been if it had gotten a season 4 or even season 4 and 5. How much more could they have done with it? And I'm going to go full fucking boomer here.
How do you do, fellow kids?
And say that kids these days can't even imagine a show that's actually good getting canceled. But it used to be a requirement that they also got viewership, not just that they were good. And now they're throwing tantrums because some dog shit on Netflix or whatever got canceled after no one watched it because it was straight ass. So I'm going to leave it there for this one. I really don't have a ton to say, but I wanted to kind of conclude my Deadwood arc with the movie and at least praise it for what it does, even though I'm a bit chagrined about what it didn't have the ability to do or the chance to do. If you've seen it, let me know what you think. I would still recommend the series and movie as a whole. There's a lot of really good stuff in there. I try to respond to all the comments that aren't just insults, like and subscribe and all that shit. Thanks. See ya.